1. Pope Stephen VI. Pope Stephen VI is living proof of the saying, when power and hatred meet, history creates scenes that even Netflix would consider too much. In 896, Stephen rose to the papal throne during a time of chaos in the church when noble factions were taking turns pulling the strings. Instead of focusing on prayer missionary work or caring for the poor, he nurtured a bizarre obsession hatred for his predecessor Formosus. The problem Formosus had already been dead for 8 months. But Stephen didn't let that stop him. He had Formosus's corpse dug up dressed in papal robes placed on the throne and put on trial. Yes, a public trial for a dead body. If TikTok had existed in the 9th century, the Paca corpse court trend would have gone viral. To make things appear serious, Stephen even appointed a deacon to act as the defense lawyer for the corpse. Imagine the Pope sternly asking, "Do you plead guilty?" while the body sat there silently decaying. The verdict was obvious: Formosus was found guilty. All decisions he had made as Pope were annulled, and his corpse was dragged out and thrown into the Tiber River. Straight out of a mafia movie, it's done dump him in the river. But unlike the movies, the people weren't entertained. Supporters of Formosus were outraged, and rumors spread that his body floated up and performed miracles. And Stephen, he was overthrown, imprisoned, and ended his life being strangled to death. 2. Pope Urban VI. Urban VI was originally chosen as pope because the cardinals thought he would be obedient, just a political puppet. But surprise, once he wore the papal crown, Urban flipped faster than a K-pop idol, changing concepts. He became hot-tempered, authoritarian, and especially fond of yelling at the cardinals. Picture a Vatican meeting where the cardinals are discussing matters and Urban suddenly screams, "Shut up! You're all corrupt, indulgent, unworthy, even of being priests, let alone cardinals." It's said he shouted so much that some cardinals literally cried on the spot. If cameras had existed back then, those clips would have gone viral with the caption, "When your boss is scarier than your sins." Of course, the cardinals couldn't take it. A group fled to Avignon and elected another pope, Clement VII. Congratulations, the church officially entered the Western Schism. A period with 2 popes at the same time lasting for decades. And don't think he was just verbally abusive. Urban was willing to torture and kill cardinals he suspected of betrayal. Some were starved to death, others were brutally tortured. The Vatican basically became a medieval version of Squid Game: Betray, and you're eliminated, stay silent, and you live. Urban VI died in 1389 officially from illness, though rumors claim he was poisoned by his own cook because no one could stand him anymore. Whatever the truth, his legacy was clear: a pope who turned the Vatican into a battlefield and sparked nearly 40 years of chaos. 3. Pope John XII. John XII was infamous for a debauched lifestyle so extreme that historians called the Vatican of his time a giant brothel. He threw drinking parties, invited prostitutes, and even turned the Holy Chapel into a gambling den. If Instagram had existed, John's stories would have read "Pray hard, party harder." Politically, he wasn't much better. Trapped in Italy's power struggles, he called on Emperor Otto I of Germany for help. Otto agreed, but in return wanted control of the Vatican. And guess what? As soon as Otto turned his back, John secretly allied with his enemies. Calling John a toxic dude is no exaggeration. When Otto found out, he returned to Rome and convened a council to prosecute the Pope. The list of charges was longer than a buffet menu: blasphemy, murder, rape, gambling, and sexual misconduct of both homosexual and heterosexual nature. John XII's death was just as scandalous. Rumor has it he died during an affair caught in the act by the husband of his mistress, who beat him to death. A fitting end for someone who lived by the motto, "Live fast, die young, and leave behind a notorious legacy." 4. Pope Alexander VI. If a mafia boss ever accidentally wore the papal crown, it would be Pope Alexander VI, also known as Rodrigo Borgia. Yes, the infamous Borgia family, complete with the full combo: corruption, sex, murder, and power. From the very start of his papal campaign in 1492, Alexander VI ran what was basically a bribery supermarket. He bought cardinals with gold, land, and even titles. As expected, whoever had the most money won. At the time, the Vatican resembled Wall Street. But his most notorious legacy was his sex life. Alexander VI openly kept mistresses, the most famous being Vanozza Catanei and Giulia Farnese, along with an entire football team of children. Among them, Cesare Borgia and Lucrezia Borgia became legends for their political ruthlessness and incest rumors. If you think Game of Thrones was dark, the Borgias were the original version. Alexander VI turned the Vatican into his family's power stage. He appointed his son Cesare as cardinal and handed out lands and titles to relatives. Rumors even claim he hosted the Banquet of Chestnuts, a feast where prostitutes crawled on their hands and knees, picking up chestnuts for the entertainment of guests. The Vatican back then sounded more like a VIP Las Vegas club. His death was just as dramatic. He was believed to have died from accidentally drinking poisoned wine that had been prepared for someone else. 5. Pope Sergius III. Before becoming Pope, Sergius was a cardinal, accused of rebellion and imprisoned. He escaped and came back with a coup. According to many accounts, Sergius III had an affair with Marozia, a powerful Roman noblewoman. The result: they are believed to have had a son who later became Pope John XII. Yes, you heard right. The Vatican may once have had a pope who was the illegitimate son of another pope. If Netflix adapted this story, it would definitely need an 18+ rating. Sergius III also had no qualms about cleaning up rivals. When he took power, he declared several previous popes illegitimate. In reality, power under his papacy lay in the hands of the Theophylact family, especially Marozia, his lover. The Vatican became a stage for political and romantic drama rather than a sacred church. Sergius III died in 911, leaving not holiness, but a sarcastic question: was the Vatican back then anything more than a reality TV show full of plot twists? 6. Pope Julius II. Upon ascending in 1503, Julius II didn't sit quietly in the Vatican. Instead, he gathered troops, formed alliances, and marched straight to the battlefield to reclaim church lands. At times, Julius even personally led campaigns in northern Italy. But Julius II wasn't just about war. He had an extravagant artistic vision. He was the one who commissioned Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling, one of the world's most iconic masterpieces. Julius II was also notorious for his sharp tongue. He cursed openly, showing no respect for anyone, not even cardinals or kings. If Twitter had existed in the 16th century, he would have been the trendsetter of Super No Filter. When he died in 1513, Julius II left behind two legacies: a politically powerful Vatican and the legendary Sistine Chapel ceiling. 7. Pope Benedict IX. 9. If there were a title, Bad Boy of the Papacy, Pope Benedict IX would easily win it. He first became pope at the age of just 20. Benedict IX was infamous for his decadent lifestyle, parties, sex scandals, and violence, but his most unique move was selling the papacy. Yes, Benedict IX got bored of being pope like one gets tired of an old iPhone, so he sold the papal throne to his godfather for a few thousand gold coins. History considers this one of the most blatant acts of corruption in the Vatican. Not only that, Benedict IX occupied the papal throne 3 different times. Deposed, returned, sold the seat, then returned again. In the end, he was permanently ousted, lived out his later years in obscurity, and died quietly. But his legacy remains loud, one of the worst popes in history. 8. Pope Leo X. From the moment he took office in 1513, Leo X turned the Vatican into a stage of luxury. Banquets, music, theater, and lavish feasts made Rome look like Renaissance Las Vegas. He poured money into the arts, sponsoring Raphael musicians, playwrights, and hosting festivals that dazzled the public. To maintain this party lifestyle, Leo X pushed aggressively for the sale of indulgences tickets to shorten time in purgatory. This was essentially the medieval version of a premium subscription plan for salvation. This move infuriated a German monk named Martin Luther, who responded with his 95 Theses nailed to a church door. Leo X died in 1521, rumored to have been poisoned. People remembered him as the pope who burned through money on luxuries and left the church bankrupt and in crisis. Which pope do you think was the most scandalous? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see the next part.